All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Friday, February 3rd of 2023. Last show of the week, looking ahead to the weekend. If you guys have any questions for, NBA, MMA, NHL for over the weekend, now is always a great time to get those questions in. For those of you just tuning in for the first time, my name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions that come in the office hours channel, in our Discord server, or live in the YouTube chat. If you're not in the Discord, there's a link in the description below to join up. And if you are not signed up with SaberSim, welcome. We do this show Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Help you guys, learn how to use the app, answer strategy questions. You can check us out with a no strings attached 7-day free trial in the description as well. So excuse me, a little short of breath here to get started. I'm going to grab some water, but going to get SaberSim pulled up, and then we will get going. That's better. All right. Just one question here. Or I'm sorry, actually 2 questions to get us started today. So if anybody has any questions, something on their mind, now is a great time to get those questions in. So let's see what we got today. 8-game NBA slate, as well as a 6-game hockey slate. So it should be a fun day. I know we got no late swap MMA kicking off fighting off tomorrow. So it should be a good time. A lot of people happy to see that. But anyways, first question here from Neil. Neil said, planning on playing the mini-max for Saturday's MMA slate. I noticed the default sliders are 0, 4, 10. Does it make more sense to move the sliders to 0, 0, 10, move ownership fade to 0 if I'm doing my own predicted duplication calculations outside of SaberSim? And looks like we had some feedback here from Shady Advice. Going to read this and then going to give my own thoughts here. Shady said, both are likely okay. You might find that you aren't getting enough good lineups on 0, 0, 10 and 0, 4, 10 would make them more likely to show up. So you have more that you like to pick from. Good feedback here from Shady. Shady is definitely a sharp player in the community. I always, read his posts and like to listen when Shady has something to say. So some of my own thoughts here, right? I think that in a sport like MMA, most of the time, I don't know the exact numbers here, but most of the time you're probably searching for the optimal, probably plays pretty close to like NFL Showdown, where more often than not, it's going to be the optimal. Sometimes, some big favorite probably loses and you can win without the optimal. I think building with 0, 0, 10, especially if you're using some custom metric or you're exporting your lineups and putting it through, something that you've built, whether it be Excel or Python or R or something like that. If you're doing something extra to account for ownership, I think it's totally okay to build on 0, 0, 10. At least you're getting those single slate optimals. They aren't being affected by correlation or ownership fade. And you can take those raw optimals and then apply whatever ownership metric or method that you're using outside of SaberSim or in custom metrics and decide what you want to do from there. So I think it's perfectly fine to build with 0, 0, 10. I think that, for players that are not doing that are not using custom metrics, that are not, exporting their lineups, putting it through something else that they use, that they built. I think that's where 0, 4, 10 comes into play, right? You're still taking those optimals, but you're kind of favoring some of those lower owned players, whether or not that's kind of skewing the sims a little bit from like their most raw form. I think that's okay. This is like a big 12 fight card. You're going to want to get to some of those lower owned plays. So I think ownership fade makes some sense if you're not doing that step. But good question, Neil. Let me know if anybody has any follow-up there. All right. Next question here from it's SM Smalls. The 4 is an A here. So this is a question from Smalls in the Discord. It says, I've been handling ownership myself rather than using the fade slider. How is SaberScore affected when ownership fade is set to 0? Also, is correlation factored into SaberScore at all, or does it not impact it? Thanks. Okay, so this is a really good question here, Smalls. I'm going to hover over to NBA for today. Going to run some lineups so we can talk about this a little bit. But, before I do that, the way SaberScore works is that SaberScore uses your sliders as inputs to the algorithm. So when correlation, or we'll use ownership fade, when ownership fade is off, it is not grading for ownership fade. When ownership is 2, it is grading for ownership fade at a smaller amount, as opposed to whether if ownership fade was at like 8, then ownership fade in the SaberScore metric would be a bigger variable or bigger part of that equation. So SaberScore is dynamic as to the fact of, what are the slider settings, what contest are you playing that's setting those sliders automatically. And then SaberScore is going to use that input that you're giving it to weight how much each of those metrics is taken into account when grading your lineups. So with ownership fade at 3 is different SaberScore calculation than when ownership fade is set to 0. So that's how it works. Correlation is included in SaberScore if the correlation slider is on. Sim diversity mostly accounts for the upside of lineups. So you can think of, correlation slider does correlation, ownership fade does ownership, and then the sim diversity slider does the upside of the lineups. And then all 3 of those things get weighted based on the slider setting. And then that is ultimately what decides the SaberScore algorithm for the lineup that you're building or the contest that you're playing, right? So that is like a brief overview of what SaberScore does. Anybody has any additional follow-up, still not, making more sense, happy to continue to talk about it. All right. Question here from, okay, I got a name pronunciation. Thank you so much. So name pronunciation is Latman. By the way, lat as in bat, Latman. All right. So Batman with an L, Latman. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I like to get to know, the people coming in on the show, asking questions. I hate when I get your guys' names wrong. So Latman said, can you explain how the builder actually builds lineups with relationship to the sliders, specifically sim diversity? But if you could touch on correlation / ownership fade, that would be great. When it takes a random bucket of sims to use, does it use that same bucket for each lineup, or does it take a random bucket, builds lineup 1, then a different random bucket builds lineup 2, and so on? Okay, this is a really good question. So the way it works, right, is depending on the sim diversity slider is going to determine how many sims we are randomly bucketing. When this slider is at 0, we are using all of the sims, right? So whatever score you see in the home screen for Joel Embiid, for instance, his projection here is 56.58. That is the mean projection across all the sims. So when sim diversity is 0, we are going to use that value. When sim diversity is 10, we are going to sim out every game on the slate one time, and we are going to take the player's projections that they score in that one random sim and then build a lineup based on those projections for whatever they score. So that's going to be random, a random projection or score from this range of outcomes that you can see if you click on an individual player. This is Joel Embiid's range of outcomes. You could hover over these bars on the histogram here and, see how often they are scoring a specific number. So about 5% of the time, he's scoring 70 fantasy points according to our sims, right? So, and then in between that, right, from 2 to 9. At 2, we're bucketing more sims, but we're not, or I'm sorry, from 1 to 9, we're bucketing more sims, but not all the sims. So that number gets a little more variant. And then at 9, we're bucketing small numbers of sims. And then that number can be a wide range of things. I don't know exactly what the number of sims that we're bucketing is, but it gets progressively smaller as the sim diversity slider gets higher. So what we're doing, right, is one, we're grabbing the sims for one lineup. Okay. So we're going to grab, let's use a number. Let's say we're using, let's say we're at sim diversity 9. I don't know if this is the right number or not. I'm just kind of guessing. We're going to take, 10 sims, right? And then we are going to see what Joel Embiid's scores are in all 10 of those sims. And then we're going to, we're going to look at the average. So maybe he does really bad and his average across those 10 sims is 45. So then now we have Joel Embiid, 45 points. And then we're going to do that for all the games. And then we're going to build one lineup. And then we're going to grab 10 new sims. And then we're going to build lineup 2. And then we're going to grab 10 new sims and then build lineup 3. So we are grabbing new buckets of sims for every one of your lineups. So if you have 500 lineups, we're going to go through that. We're going to iterate through that process 500 times. What happens with correlation and ownership fade is these are like multipliers to the raw projections that get pulled from the sims. So, in our example where Joel Embiid scores 45 points, let's say that he is really low owned. And let's say Nikola Jokic is also on the slate and Nikola Jokic is very high owned. And let's say Nikola Jokic scores like his average points, which we'll say is like 60. So because the ownership fade slider is active, what we are going to do is we are going to like tax high owned players and then boost low owned players. So maybe Joel Embiid's projection goes from 45 to 50, and maybe Nikola Jokic's projection goes from 60 to 55 because he is higher owned. So the higher the ownership fade is, the more we are going to boost low owned players and tax high owned players. And then correlation, what this is going to do is it's going to look at the correlations within a game. It's going to look at the upside correlations. So we don't really care who Joel Embiid is correlated to when he does really bad, but when he has a really good outcome, we want to know how other players on the team do. In a scenario like that, I could bet you that James Harden probably does poorly, which I might be wrong here. The correlation is negative, but it is a small negative number. Most of his highest negative correlations are to San Antonio players. So these really high negatively correlated players are probably less likely to get into the lineup with Joel Embiid when the correlation slider is on. We can see he only has very, very small positive correlation to 2 players. That's kind of the nature of basketball, but that impact of the correlation slider gets amplified in sports like NHL, sports like MLB. That's how we get stacks naturally throughout the sims and things like that. So that's how it works, Latman. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Happy to continue to shed some light onto how that process works. Okay. This is another one. You guys can let me know how to pronounce it. It looks to be like OX Drog or DR. It's DROG. So let me know how to pronounce that one as well, guys. All right. Going to get this from the Discord into the YouTube chat. This is our last question in the Discord. See a couple questions in the YouTube chat. So if anybody has any questions, now is a great time to get them in. All right. Are there plans to add a lineup builder for FanDuel Soccer? I use my own hold on. I use my own projections, but I can't build unique lineups with FanDuel, just DK. Okay, so the pronunciation is 0x Drog. Thank you very much, guys. It is very hard to get these phonetic pronunciations right from reading text. So 0x Drog is what I'm going with. All right, so are there plans to add a lineup builder for FanDuel Soccer? I use my own projections, but I can't build unique lineups with FanDuel, just DK. Okay, so FanDuel, or not just FanDuel, but soccer in general is something that is on our roadmap. Frankly, I don't know when we're going to build out the sim for it. I do know that it is something the team wants to do. So I'm going to take it back as a feature request, let the team know people are asking for it. So 0x Drog soccer sims. So the more you guys ask for it, the easier it is for me to push for this type of stuff. He said, not even sims, just a lineup builder. It's grayed out. Oh, okay. So I think the reason it was grayed out for FanDuel was because they changed the salary format. They went to like players were like 10 salary, 15 salary during the World Cup. I don't know why it was like different from some of the other soccer that they do. I'm not a soccer expert. So there was an issue with supporting it. I will figure out if we can support that going forward. So thanks for the heads up. Soccer support FanDuel. I know we were having issues during the World Cup, so we kind of took it down just to stop people from running into that issue. So yeah, it definitely had to do with the salary stuff. Looks like Zero Xtrog is aware of that. All right, hopping over to YouTube chat and got D Keith King Show said, good luck, everybody. Yep. Hey, if you guys have any big wins and, during the week, throw them in the office hours channel and we can shout you guys out here. So I'm always rooting for everybody. All right. Hiker Willie said, as I filter my lineups and reduce my pool, how do I move lineups from the pool into entries so I have more lineups to sort? Okay. As I filter my lineups and reduce my pool, how do I move lineups from the pool into entries so I have more lineups to sort? Okay, Hiker Willie. So what I'm going to say here. So all right, we have this build with 500 lineups, right? Let's say, you're applying a filter. Maybe it's like a projection filter, right? So I'm gonna let me know if this is, there's two ways to filter, right? I think this is one way to do it. So let me know if this is the way to do it or if you're doing it with the magnifying glasses. But I'm going to go about answering both. So first is lineup pool filters, right? Where you could say don't show me any lineups where the projected score is less than, I don't know, we'll say 285. Just throwing out a number. Okay, great. We got rid of 43 lineups. So now you're not going to see those 43 lineups. Those are going to be removed. All of your working pool is now 457 lineups. So when you start applying, min uniques or exposure adjustments, the builder is automatically going to tap into that pool and then start skipping lineups. So we see, at min uniques 4 here, our bottom lineup is 35. That means we're skipping lineups. So if we go up here, I'm going to start at lineup 1. We skip lineup 7. We skip lineup 9. They become grayed out because they are not meeting this new threshold of 4 unique players from every other lineup in our pool. So the builder is going to tap into the pool and then go and find lineups that can meet those requirements. So that part happens automatically. Same thing if you start adjusting exposures. Maybe you want less Sabonis. Maybe you want to be 2x his ownership. So you apply a max exposure here, and then boom, we're going to tap into more lineups in the pool. So now we're down to lineup 122. That kind of happens automatically, right? So that's one way to use filters, apply filters. The second way is, maybe it's not a lineup filter that we're talking about. Maybe it is a magnifying glass filter. So you're saying, I want to find, maybe I'm building, 3 lineups here and I'm doing something small. And maybe I don't have any, who's a high projected player that we don't have. Okay, maybe I want Damian Lillard, right? So then I'm going to hit, the filter on Damian Lillard. I don't have any of my top 3, but there are 20 lineups in my pool that do have Damian Lillard. And I want one of those lineups in my 3, right? What I would do then is one, use the plus icon, go from lineups to pool. And then from here, I can hit this little lock button. What this is going to do is it is going to move this lineup into my number of lineups here. And then regardless of whatever other changes I make, it is going to prioritize this lineup. So now it's showing number of lineups is 4 because I added an extra lineup. I'm just going to change this back to 3. And instead of removing the lineup that I locked, it is going to remove another lineup. So that is how I would do it. Use this lock icon and make sure that this is green, and then that lineup will never go away. So little follow-up here said, in your example, my lineup would drop below 20. How do I get it back up to 20? So yeah, so all I would do is just come back to this number of lineups once you turn that filter off. So what I did was I zeroed in on Lillard here, and then next to the name of your build, the little filter icon is active. Click the lineup filters, get rid of the filter, and then you could come back in here and re-change this number back to whatever number that you want. All right, good question there. Moving on, got a question from Andrew Hannon. Say, hey, Andrew, only have time for NBA single entry tonight. In your opinion, would you leave the sliders as default or looking for more sim diversity / ownership? Okay, this is a good question. one, I think it depends on what contest you're playing, right? So the reason I say that is I think especially on DraftKings, I think there's a $1 single entry, a $3 single entry, or a $2. Then there's like a $5 single entry and a $12 single entry. And then it quickly jumps to $27, $40, $100, right? So I think it depends what contest you're playing, because I really think like the $5 single entry plays a lot different from like the $27 and the $40 and the $100 single entry contest, right? So one, I don't know what you guys are playing, so I kind of want to just cover this a little more broadly here. But I think like as you make that jump from like $5 single entry to like $27 to $40, I think those contests get a lot sharper really quickly. I'm usually inclined to increase ownership fade or sim diversity for contests where I feel the field is sharper and the number of entrants is smaller. So like that $5 single entry is usually like 5,000, 6,000 unique entries. But then when you get into like the $40, it's like 400 entries. And then you get into, or I think the $40 is actually 1,000. And then the $100 is like 400-ish entries, right? So if you enter a contest where you feel like the field is sharper and the field is going to be swapping more and the field is going to be on more of the best plays, I'm okay increasing ownership fade and sim diversity. One, in an attempt to get a little bit different from the field with ownership fade, and then two, to take smaller buckets of sims to try and get some high upside plays that the field might not be gravitating towards. So I think increasing ownership fade and sim diversity is kind of contest specific, and it's up to you to like figure out, what contest you're playing, who's in those contests, what type of players are in those contests, and how often are they swapping? Are the best plays being owned at a higher rate than some of the lower single entry stuff that you're playing? So those are questions that I'm thinking about that are helping me make my determination. But I think that increasing ownership fade and sim diversity is totally okay if you deem it necessary. All right. Looks like Hiker Willie said, thank you. I will give that a try. Yep. Happy to help, Hiker Willie, and let me know if you have any issues with that. We could walk through it again anytime. Franklin said, what's up, Andrew? MMA is around the corner. Do you know any websites that will tell me if a player is a wrestler or a striker? So frankly, I don't know any good research websites for MMA. What I would do, Franklin, is I would join the Discord if you're not already joined up. If you're not, there's a link in the description below. Get in the Discord and throw a message in the MMA channel. Our resident MMA expert is Will on the team, on the models team, reformed racer on DraftKings. You could see him in the MMA streets each and every card. He is a very sharp MMA player and built the MMA model that we use for our sims. We do sim every fight, and contrary to what some takes on some podcasts might be, we are simming every fight. So if you have any questions about our MMA builder or good places to research, throw a message in the MMA Discord channel, and will be happy to help if he sees it, or there are other sharp MMA players roaming around that channel that could also give you some more insightful information than I have right now on the show. Franklin said, have a great weekend. Thanks. Let's get to the money, everyone. Yep, I agree. Goofy Jeff said, can you help me build a lineup for NBA? I use my own build too. So Goofy Jeff, if you're playing like single entry, NBA, one thing that I like to encourage people to do is to, run the build on default settings, right? But then when you get to the post build, look at more than one lineup. Open that up to like 10 lineups. Open that up to 50 lineups. Maybe you are, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe you have like some specific players in mind. So like right here, right? I run a single entry build. Boom, I get one lineup. Open this up to, my number of lineups is 10. Look at the exposures of the top 10 lineups, who's constantly coming up. Look at the stack types of the top 10 and see, what the different stack types are. Look at the team stacks, who's being stacked a lot. It looks like Sacramento is, right? So you could use some of those things to kind of guide you to where what lineup you ultimately want to play. You know, you could, I mean, I think that a lot of these lineups are really close in EV, and I don't think you go wrong by playing any one of these. So that's why I kind of like to open it up, and you know, maybe my top lineup has a guy that's only in one lineup, right? And a good example of that I'm seeing here is I'm looking for somebody. So I actually don't see anybody in this top lineup that's only in one lineup. Like maybe, you know, Josh Richardson, this is the only lineup he's in out of the 10. And then maybe you want to find a different lineup where, you know, some of those players are used more than once. That kind of tells you that they're a little bit better of a play, right? Or maybe you did research and you're like, you know what, I really want to use who's two guys. I really want to use a lineup with Trenton Watford because I think he's a good value play, and a lineup that also has, let's say, Kyle Kuzma, just for fun, right? And then boom, you can see that, you know, both of those players are used in lineup 6, and then maybe you want to go with lineup 6 because your research told you that these two players were both really good plays and they come up in this lineup together, right? So those are two ways that I kind of like to do it. I was actually talking about this with Cloak Mistborn in the pro channel earlier today about, you know, these are ways that I like to find, you know, one lineup to kind of go with, find, you know, a lineup with the players that I want. And then, you know, I only want these two pieces. And then I let SaberSim, you know, I pick the best lineup with all the other pieces that SaberSim put into that lineup and graded highly. So I think that's one way to do it, or kind of filter this down from here. You know, maybe you don't want to play any 3-stack lineups in your top 10, right? So you get rid of these 6 lineups that are 3 stacks, and then now you're left with 4 lineups that have 2 stacks, and then you could kind of pick one from there. So definitely think there's a way to kind of pick a single entry lineup and still utilize SaberSim. All right. Scrolling down here, Franklin said, what's the Geomean for the MMA slate? So if you're interested in using Geomean, we have documentation explaining this. I actually did this video myself. I can't explain it better than I explained it in this video. So if you go up here to the settings, you go down to help. This will take you to our support documentation. So if you go to sabersim.com/support, it will take you to this screen. You go down here to our frequently asked questions. Just go to view more. And then at the top, type in Geomean. And then from this search bar, we couldn't find any. Okay, so maybe let's go product own. Okay, so I don't know why this didn't pop up. Oh, he put geometric mean. So I shortened it. My bad. So geometric mean, you got to use the actual name here. So it's how do ownership product and ownership geometric mean work? You click on this article, and I did an in-depth breakdown with an example of what the differences are, how to use them, and how to apply them in SaberSim. I would really recommend watching this video. It's about 4 to 5 minutes long here. It is as deep into Geomean as I could go, and product ownership, explaining it, the similarities and differences, and how to apply them in the app. So give that a shot. You can also find some content on it on our YouTube channel. If you go to the search bar, type in Geomean or geometric mean, whatever one it is. And we have multiple videos explaining it, people asking it in office hours, etc. So check all these videos out. You know, the great thing about the office hours is that you could click into a video, and then you could go to the description here, click show more, and then you could listen to the snippets. Let me get this question off the screen. You can listen to the snippets of whatever you want to, whatever you are searching for. So I would read this product ownership and geometric mean, click on this hyperlink, watch that segment, and then it looks like that's the only segment about geometric mean in this video. And then boom, you move on to the next video and only listen to the tidbits that you want to listen to. So check that out, Franklin. And, you know, come back next week and let me know if you have any follow-up on those videos. Okay, scrolling down here, Jeffrey Witt said, this may have been covered multiple times. For example, on NBA, I set player exposure for 20 max, 500 pool build screen. How do I get the builder just to give me the exposure I'm looking for? 500 to 20, 500 in the pool, 220. Okay, so if you have, a 500 pool build here and you're building your number of lineups is 20 lineups, all you have to do is change this min-max exposure columns. So let's say, this is too much Sabonis for me. I only want to play, I want to match this pool exposure. So I'm going to turn max exposure to 56. So there's two ways that the auto apply works. So right now my auto apply is off. If I make an adjustment, I'm going to have to hit this apply button, or I could turn apply exposures on automatically. So then whenever I make an adjustment, it iterates through the lineups and finds those lineups right away. So one, I'm going to lower Sabonis. And then two, I'm going to increase Joel Embiid because I want to play more of him. So maybe I want to play like 50% Embiid. I'm just going to put that number in the min exposure column. Because the auto apply is on, the exposures are going to update automatically. And then it is going to go and find the best lineups that meet this min exposure threshold. So because we set this threshold so high, we now have 80% exposure to Embiid. Maybe this is too high for you now. So then I would come in here and then also set a max exposure and then get the builder to get me within a range that I want. All right. Franklin said, I don't have the pro plan, so it doesn't show up what my Geomean is for each lineup. Is there a way to see what it is that's only not only for the pro plan? So there's no way to view what the Geomean is, but if you want to set a Geomean threshold, so let's say, for MMA, for example, over on DraftKings, we have this 12 fight card. You watch the support video, you come up with a Geomean of lineups that you want to stay under. You can apply that as a lineup rule. So go to lineup rules. This is on any plan. Go to add new rule, go to aggregate rule type. And then the first drop down is my own. The second drop down is going to be geometric mean. And then I'm going to say no more than, and I'm not sure what a good Geomean for this contest is. I'm going to say 25, right? And then I'm going to save this rule. So now that this is a rule, the Geomean is no more than 25. That rule is going to be applied to every single lineup that gets built. So you could go into the post build once the lineups load and are done being built and know that every lineup is below the Geomean threshold that you set in the home screen. So no way to see it as a summary stat, but by setting the rule, you are guaranteeing that the Geomean is going to be below that threshold. All right. Andrew Hannon has a question. I haven't entered any contests yet, but do understand what you are saying. Tougher competition, higher dollar, more diversity / ownership, and less the lower dollar. Thank you. Good luck tonight. Also, have a great weekend. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew, we'll be right back on Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern for the next show. If you guys, if you have questions over the weekend for everybody out there, come back next week, get your questions answered. Throw the questions in the Office Hours channel over the weekend. That way we have a steady queue of questions going into next week, but we are not done just yet. Goofy Jeff said, thank you. Yep, happy to help, Goofy Jeff. Hiker Willie said, that is how I build my single entry lineups. I think that's the best way to build your single entry lineups. You get to compare and contrast some different lineups and kind of zero in on the one you want. Like I said, I think the EV of those lineups is a lot closer than you might think from 1 to 10, 1 to 20, etc. All right, Jeffrey said, I've tried that and it takes me back to the main page. I don't set mins, only max. So what it sounds like might be happening is that you might be setting a lot of max exposures. And if you, at some point, you're going to run out of lineups and it's going to come, you're going to get this unable to meet exposures message here. So if that's something that's happening, right? Let's say I'm starting from scratch. Let's say, I'm just chopping down all of these ownerships to no more than 50 here. And then I'm going to, increase some of these other guys to 50. And we're going to hit apply and we're going to see what happens. Okay. So that was fine, able to be met. And then let's say that I want to get to that message. So let's see if I can get there. I'm going to hit apply. Okay, boom. Can't meet exposures, right? What's going to happen is the builder is going to highlight in red boxes the exposures that are basically causing it an issue. What is the problem, right? And it's all these guys in red here. So what you can do is determine, what are your most important adjustments that you made, and are you okay walking some of these back, right? So maybe you're just really big on James Harden, but you're not as convicted about somebody like Kevin Huerter. A bug landed on me, sorry guys. And then so you walk back this Kevin Huerter exposure. I reset his mid exposure. Boom. Now the message goes away. Now I have my lineups, and I still have 85% of him, not 100, but 85%, right? So you can kind of walk that back a little bit, figure out what the most important adjustments for you are. Or what I would do is, if you're really strong about those adjustments, I would write down the players that are giving you issues and the direction that they're giving you an issue in. So like, for instance, it's giving me issue with James Harden and Kevin Huerter increasing their min exposure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write down their names and the direction that I want more of them for. So like, for this instance, I'm going to go back to the home screen, and then I'm going to give them a projection boost. So I'm going to go find Philly here, and then I'm going to increase James Harden by about 10%. So let's say like 49 points. And then I'm going to go over to Sacramento, and then I'm going to increase Huerter to about by 10%. This is just a rough estimate here. Let's say like 2 points, right? Get them up to like 31. And then now when I run my new build, the builder is going to have more lineups with these players in them, like more organically. And then it's less likely that I run into that issue. So if you're moving a player in a direction and the builder's having a hard time meeting that direction, I would make notes of the players that it's having issues with, adjust their projections in the home screen, rerun the build one time, and then see if you can get to that step. Or I would make some sacrifices in the build that you already ran and figure out which plays you're most convicted about, and let the builder do some other things with some of those plays that you're less concerned about overall. So those are my thoughts, and let me know if you guys have any follow-up. All right. So it looks like just some feedback here from Jeffrey and Franklin. Appreciate all of you asking questions, tuning in live. You guys, the show is for you guys, and I'm here to give feedback and my thoughts on any and all questions. But looks like that's all the questions in the YouTube chat and the Discord. We will be right back on Monday, February 6th for our Monday show. Good luck in all of your contests today and over the weekend. I hope you guys win. And until then, I will see you. Take care.